Welcome to the Cooper Smith Career Consulting Study Guide Series, English Comp 101. We are now going to get ready to take our final exam in this course. The first thing I'd like you to understand is parallel structure. Now, parallel structure is use parallel sentence structure for parallel ideas, and last I'm going to explain to you what that is. And here we're using our colors, which will help you explain it to you better. So here's an example of correct parallel structure. Yesterday we went swimming, canoeing, and biking. It would be incorrect to say yesterday we went swimming, canoeing, and we also went for a bike ride, because it throws the audience, the person who's reading it, off, and that's why you wouldn't do it. Correct. She was a natural, an unusually graceful, unusually flexible dancer. Incorrect. She was a natural, a dancer with unusual flexibility and gracefulness. So if you look at this and you think to yourself, I don't understand why one would be correct and one wouldn't be correct. The unnatural set it up. So then you have is a natural, an unusually graceful, comma, unusually flexible dancer. It would be incorrect to say a natural, a dancer with unusual flexibility and gracefulness, because you're not separating the two pieces here, which would be the gracefulness and the flexibility is not being separated. That's being clumped together, and that's why it would be incorrect. Ideas presented with parallel structure are more effective and sound less jarring. Hint: when proofreading, read the sentence out loud to hear which sounds the least awkward. And please just read it out loud to yourself, read it to somebody, have somebody read it to you to see, does this make sense? When you practice beforehand, so that when you get to the test, what I want you to do is just look at it and just talk to yourself and say, because there'll be examples of this on the test, and just look at the question and just say, does this make sense to me at all? And just don't worry about talking to yourself when you take the test. That's fine. Punctuation marks. A period. Place at the end of a sentence or statement. Example: Mary Smith is 45 years old. You've seen this all since elementary school. Example: 1 plus 2 is equal to 3, period. A question mark. Placed at the end of a direct question. Example of a direct question: are you going to the hockey game? Do not put a question mark at the end of an indirect question. Example of an indirect question: Lisa asked whether or not Jake would be going to the store. Just because the word asked there doesn't make it a question. Commas. A comma is placed between independent clauses and is followed by a coordinating conjunction. And, or, nor, for, but, yet, and so. And you use these words all the time, but you just didn't know that they were called coordinating conjunctions. So we're just going to use the technical terms. An independent clause are a group of words that could stand on its own. Example: I am so bored of this class. And if you wanted to stop and just say, I am so bored of this class, period, you could stop. I wonder when it is going to end is also, I wonder when it is going to end, also can stand on its own. You're putting in the word and. Because you have the word and in there, I am so bored of this class, comma, and I wonder when it is going to end, so now you're combining two independent clauses. Example number 2. I was not interested in baseball, period, but I went to the game to spend time with my son. I went to the game to spend time with my son would be an independent clause. It could stand on its own, and it's attached with this word but, so after the last word in the first independent clause, you would have the comma. Comma. Number 2. A comma separates a dependent clause from an independent clause when the dependent clause is first, and this is really important. Let's look at the examples, because it's when it's first. A dependent clause is a group of words that can't stand on its own. Example: swinging forcefully, He hits the ball so hard that it makes a cracking noise. If you look at the word swinging forcefully, you'll see that's a dependent clause because swinging forcefully is not a sentence. He hits the ball so hard that it makes a cracking noise. That's an independent clause. When you have the first part, the dependent clause, coming first, then you would put a comma afterwards and combine them together, and that would be creating one sentence. Example number 2. Although she reads nightly, she has not yet finished the book. Again, using the same rules. Do not place a comma if the dependent clause comes after the independent clause. Example, you can go back to that same example that we used before. She has not yet finished the book, although she reads nightly. You would not, in this case, need a comma at all. When it comes, the dependent clause becomes after the independent clause. Punctuation marks. Again, we're back with commas. A comma sets off explanatory words or phrases. Example, my swimming partner, Margaret, has been swimming for 5 years longer than I have. Margaret, which is the explanatory word for my swimming partner, there would be a comma before and after, because you could say my swimming partner has been swimming for 5 years longer than I have. Another example, her dress, which was blue in color, ripped when she sat down. You could say her dress ripped when she sat down. The explanation of her dress is which was blue in color. A comma separates between items in a series, but is not placed after the last item. Example, he is a tall, comma, handsome, comma, striking young man. You would not have a comma after striking. Semicolons. Semicolons joins two independent clauses and is stronger than a comma but weaker than a period. The semicolon is not followed by a coordinating conjunction and, or, nor, for, but, yet, so. Example with the semicolon. I am so bored of this class, semicolon. I wonder when it is going to end. You're using the semicolon instead of this coordinating conjunction. Example with a comma. I am so bored of this class and I wonder when it is going to end. So that you have the same example in the first case and in the second case, one using a semicolon and one using a comma. Sometimes a subordinating conjunction will follow the semicolon. The subordinating conjunction is followed by a comma. I know, a lot of words. Go to the examples and it'll all make sense. Examples of subordinating conjunctions are however, therefore, thus, because. The dress in the store was expensive. However, I bought it anyway. The apostrophe. An apostrophe is used to show that letters have been left between two words to form a contraction. And examples are your, where, that's, and you've learned all of this before in elementary school. Quotation marks. Quotation marks are placed before and after a quotation from a speaker. Example, Mark said, I would love to have an ice cream cone right now. The period is right before the second quotation mark, but I want you to see the grammar here, where the comma is. Go back to Mark said, comma, quotation mark, then you have your statement. The period ends that, and then it closes with the quotation mark. Example, she can't come to the store now because she's sick, her mother explained. Again, the comma from she's sick at the end of, after the word sick, comes before the end quotation mark. The comma is before the second quotation mark. Number 2, placed before and after the name of an article, a poem, a song, or short story when quoting the name. Example, Living a Lie by John Doe, and that would be the article or song or short story. A novel would be italicized or underlined in writing when you are writing by hand. That's what it means by by writing. So that if you were taking the name of a novel, just to make this really clear to you, and you were typing it out in Word, to use old-fashioned phrase of typing it out, but if you put it on the paper, on the computer, then what you would do for the name of the novels, you would italicize it. If you're writing it by hand, if you're taking a paper and pencil exam, you would underline the name of the novel. Place before, let's go number 3 for back to quotation marks. Place before and after words of a quotation. Example, Benjamin Franklin is known to have said, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. In general, other punctuation marks, example, comma, question mark, or exclamation point, will be placed within the quotation marks. However, there are exceptions to the rule, which you don't have to worry about now. What is a pronoun? And I'm sure you've wondered about this many times, so I'll explain it to you. A pronoun is a word that is in place of another noun. Examples: he, she, we, they, everyone, you, them, his, ours, who, what, which, herself, this, that, those, most, such, it, its. What is an antecedent? The antecedent is the noun which the pronoun has replaced. Example: the club members picked up their coats before leaving the hall. The club members is the antecedent, and there is the pronoun referring to the club members. Now this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky for you. Pronouns and antecedents must agree with each other. This means that both must be either singular or plural, not one and one. Examples: incorrect. When the teacher walked into the room, they stood silently until the class was quiet. Correct. When the teacher walked into the room, she stood silently until the class was quiet. Teacher is singular, so they, which is the plural word, would be the wrong choice to use. Incorrect. Everyone can choose their own slice, and this is where many people make mistakes. Correct. Everyone can choose his or her own slice. And often, and this is what I want you to know, very often in writing, people don't know if they're using his or her for something like everyone. They want to go his or her. It's okay to generically choose one in cases like this. And usually people use the male version, which is the his, as being the generic, but either one would be proper. Tricky pronouns. Any word beginning with any, some, or every singular. Examples: everyone, anybody, someone. Each, every, singular. Example: every female lion and tiger arrives before the male to mark its territory. A pronoun must agree with the nearest antecedent when compound antecedents are joined by or nor. Example: it's incorrect to say, either the Roth twins or Susan should bring their tablecloths. Correct. Either the Roth twins or Susan should bring her tablecloths. The reason being is that Susan is the nearest antecedent to the pronoun, so that the reader, and you have to remember this is the writer, the reader is always in their mind going to match up what that pronoun with the last noun. Better, either Susan or the Roth twins should bring their tablecloths. If you wanted to use their, then you would just switch it around and you would put the Roth twins, which are plural, and then you would be able to use the word there. Dangling modifiers. What are dangling modifiers? Dangling modifiers are modifiers that appear to modify a word which is not there or the wrong word. Example: running down the street, the Statue of Liberty came into view. Did the Statue of Liberty run down the street? Obviously not. The sentence should be phrased, running down the street, we saw the Statue of Liberty come into view. Here, running down the street modifies we, which is correct. To solve this problem, I'm going to tell you, when you're taking the exam, just read it out loud to yourself and see if that, put yourself in the position of being the audience, not as the test taker, not as the writer, but as the audience. And when you take it from the viewpoint of somebody who's on the other, is on the receiving end of this communication piece of the sentence, how would they interpret it? And that's where you'll be able to figure this out. The Iroquois now have abandoned the cave and live in another part of the region. Are the Iroquois abandoning the cave right now? No. The sentence should be phrased, the Iroquois have abandoned the cave and now live in another part of the region. Here now modifies the live in another part of the region, which is correct. Capitalization. The following must be capitalized. The first word in every sentence. The ball rolled into the street, capital T. You learned this in elementary school. Sentences following a colon. That's a sentence. Martin's response to complaints about his use of vulgar language is this, colon. This is a free country and I can express myself in any way I like. The reason why there's a capital T here is because it is a complete sentence. The first word of a sentence in a parenthesis needs to be capitalized. Do not capitalize if the parenthetical phrase appears within another sentence. Let me explain. There's a lot of words here and I don't want you to be confused. We went to the zoo today. Period. Parentheses. The zoo. I feel like I live in one and never need to take the time to visit. End of parentheses. Now, it's a capital T for the zoo because after the word today you had a period. So this stands on its own, this next section. She sleeps in, parentheses, this may be her only luxury, close the parentheses, every Sunday morning. This may be her only luxury would be able to be a complete sentence and stand on its own, but it's in the middle of a sentence and you don't have a period after the word in. If you said she sleeps in, period, this may be her only luxury every Sunday morning, and then put that into a section by itself because every Sunday morning would not exist by itself. Then you would have to capitalize the T, but in this case, in the middle of a sentence, the T is not capitalized. The following must be capitalized. All proper nouns, specific people, places, things, or ideas. Mickey Mantle, California, Sloan Kettering Hospital, Judaism, which is an idea, Queen Elizabeth, Israel World Series. Organizations, Democratic Party, Spring Valley Senior Citizens Club, New York Police Department. Languages, Spanish, French, German, Japanese. Sections of a country are capitalized. Michelle is from the Southwest. Do not capitalize directions. After flying Southwest for business, he decided to take a quick vacation to Florida. In this case, even though you're using Southwest in the example before, you're saying Southwest as a place. And as a place, Southwest would be capitalized. After flying Southwest, meaning just in the direction, nothing specific, for business, it would not be capitalized. The following must be capitalized. The following must be capitalized. Days of the week, months, special events. Tuesday, January, the Battle of Saratoga. Titles of specific courses. Do not capitalize the names of fields of study. Who teaches algebra would be a capital A, 303. She's planning on studying algebra next semester. In that case, algebra would be, the A in algebra would be lowercase. Titles of books, newspapers, magazines, official documents, stories, poems, articles, plays, songs, films, photos, works of art, and departments. An example, an Army battalion's name. They would all be capitalized. When capitalizing a title, the following rules apply. The first and last word must be capitalized. All words in between must be capitalized. Words not to capitalize in articles, a, an, the, short prepositions, example, against, at, in, of, and coordinating conjunctions and, or, nor, for, but, yet. So you are not responsible for the exam to know that these are prepositions against. You just have to know that they exist, and that you would, in the rules of capitalization, that all of these, you don't have to know that a, an, and the is an article, but what you do need to know is that it's not capitalized in a title. The Diary of Anne Frank, Nothing Gold Can Stay, Crimes Against Children. You could just look this over, and it will make sense to you. Italicizing and underlining. When printing, the following words must be italicized. Titles of entire works, books, newspapers, films, example, Midsummer's Night Dream, Huckleberry Finn, New York Times. Note, short stories and titles of articles are placed in quotation marks and not italicized. Words of special use of foreign languages. She didn't go to the store, but I did. Because you're emphasizing the word I, and you want the reader to know that the way they would read it is, oh, she didn't go to the store, but I did. You want them to read it, she didn't go to the store, but I did. That's why it's going to be italicized. So many young couples have come to this town that it is often called the honeymoon city. His mother did not appreciate it when he kvetched all afternoon about the canceled trip. In this case, the word kvetched, which is not an English word, would be italicized, and you're using the name, the honeymoon city, because it's not really a name, but you're using it in a special case as a nickname. When writing by hand, all words which need to be italicized need to be underlined, and that's an important note. Fragments and run-ons. A sentence needs to have both a subject and a predicate to be independent. Example, incorrect. Into the street, the boy. Correct. The ball rolled into the street, the boy fell down. Something that you've learned over and over again. A sentence needs to have the proper punctuation after an independent clause. Example, incorrect. The dolphin dived back into the water and then swam back up for food. It caught the fish and swam away. Correct. The dolphin dived back into the water and then swam back up for food. Period. Capital I. It caught the fish and swam away. This is how you know if a sentence is a run-on. Just read it to yourself. If you can't catch your breath, it means it's a run-on. Other rules of proper writing. All parts of the sentence must have tense agreement. Example, incorrect. After the pizza man completes the slicing, he placed the pizza into the box. Correct. After the pizza man completes the slicing, he places the pizza into the box. In the first sentence, the beginning of the sentence was in the present tense, and in the end, it was the past tense. Students get confused about this all the time. If you're going to stay in the present tense, stay in the present tense. If you're going to stay in the past tense, stay in the past tense, but don't mix and match. Sentences shouldn't be too long, confusing, and complex. This is not only to do with taking the exam, but in general, when you're doing your writing, make sure that your sentences make sense to the audience. If it's these long, convoluted sentences where the audience or the reader goes, huh? I don't know, I don't get it, then you know you've got to go and change it. New paragraphs. An essay of various thoughts can't be combined into one paragraph. A new thought needs to be placed in a new paragraph. Each paragraph must contain its own idea and be about, that's why topic sentences were invented, by the way, so that your topic sentence, we're not getting into that now, but that topic sentence in the rules of writing keeps you focused in that one paragraph. Do not combine many different ideas in one paragraph. Critical reading. On the exam, we'll be given a passage to read. Based on the passage, we'll have to answer a set of questions. The questions are there. Follow the template. The answers will need to be made in paragraph form. Suggestions. As you read, mark down the answers. It's really very simple. Keep the questions next to you. And then when you do your critical reading, look throughout the essay what's going to match up to your answers, and then you just compose a paragraph, a few paragraphs based on that, and you'll be fine. I wouldn't worry about the critical reading. If you're clear and you just stick to the template of and think of the questions as being your template, you'll be fine. You'll be able to put together a paragraph or two. It'll be fine. I just want to thank you so much, because this is the end of English Comp 101, and I hope you all did well, and I'll see you on 102.